AI is not going to replace people. I don't think it's going to replace great leaders. I think, one of the things that AI is doing is exposing leadership weakness. And, I've had the good fortune of working with PE companies that have been on the leading edge of developing and investing in AI factories and in AI thought leadership for the last 10 years. And what that has given me confidence in is, you can't just take a large language model like any of the ones that would come to mind and put your processes into that, because that is only going to create more confusion. I think what you have to do is you have to start from first principles and really build AI into the foundation of your company. And what I mean by that, Dagen, is if you think about workflow processes across the revenue journey or across any business, those are the things that you need to start using AI.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Executive Intelligence, where business leadership meets artificial intelligence. My name is Dagen Davis, and I'm your host. And today we have Patrick Cole Bowman. He is the founder of PCB Advisory. Patrick, or Cole, how are we doing today? And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Dagen, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we'll just dive right into it. I know a big request from people who watch our show is really just kind of learning right off the bat what you do and who you are. So Cole, could you explain that to us?
Yeah, Dagen, happy to. So Patrick Cole Bowman, founder of PCB Advisory. I've been a CRO and executive in vertically backed SaaS organizations for PE sponsors for 15 years. I specialize really in go-to-market architecture and the CRO role, which is evolving. And now doing fractional services, both from a CRO, COO, or even CEO perspective. So happy to be here to share a few minutes with you.
Yeah, so that's interesting. A lot of people understand the role of the CEO, maybe not every single detail, but in general, what the CEO is doing in each company, but um, not necessarily what a CRO or a COO has to do. But then you throw in the fractional piece, which you're working on, and so could you explain that to us a little bit more detail of what their roles are and where they come into play?
Yeah, happy to help with that. We help founder-led or sponsor-backed companies that maybe aren't ready or willing to bring on their first CRO or COO full-time, Dagen. And so really help to bring in, operating discipline, help the founder get clarity around what it's going to take in order to grow the company beyond where the founder is taking it. In terms of, early on founders definitely don't lack vision. They don't lack energy. They don't lack, ability to be involved in most of the day-to-day operations, whether that be sales or post-sales. They're in a lot of meetings. And so by bringing in a fractional CRO or COO, it really helps to give the founder more space to focus on working on the business as opposed to working in the business, is the way that I would characterize it.
Okay. Yeah, I know with founder-led businesses that a lot of the times you kind of get you came from the ground up, right? And you started everything yourself, so you're used to just doing everything yourself. But then you get into this kind of I guess regular routine, right, where you're doing everything. And so I guess my next question would be, when would a founder know that it's right for them to bring on a fractional CRO or COO?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the things that founders should be looking at is, is the business outgrowing the systems that are currently in place? Oftentimes, whether it's bootstrapped or, there's limited, capital available in terms of how the systems work. They know and sell to everyone that's in their space. And so when it becomes necessary to install a more systematic approach, whether it's around who their ideal customer profile is, what types of folks they're looking to hire to bring in, that can really start to accelerate the business. I think that's when it's an appropriate time to look for fractional resources that might be able to help them by guiding some of those new team members or putting the systems in place that's going to allow the business to grow beyond the founder's capability in terms of scale.
Okay. And then as far as you, do you focus on one industry, or what's your clientele look like?
Yeah, so my background is really prop tech, fintech, early sort of in that 3 to 10 million in ARR, where it's still founder led, and then I come in to help the founders sort of look at corporate development activities, which may include going out to the market to look for new capital, new investors. That might help the business to grow in a way that the founder's not going to be able to do by themselves. So those are really my specialties in terms of really that full lead to cash cycle. So everything from marketing and lead generation to accelerating demand through the funnel. And then on the other side of the contract signing, making sure that there's no leakage between what you saw happening on the left side of the revenue bow tie, as many might be familiar with, and the right side of the bow tie, where that prospect has now become a customer and we're looking to give that customer an experience that's going to make them want to renew, that's going to make them want to continue to grow with us in terms of adding new products and services.
Okay. So, in your experience, where do you see founder-led companies need the most help, and at what stage are they struggling the most, and then what area at that stage do they need the most help?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, really. And so I think each company, each founder, brings their own unique skill set and their own unique expertise. And so it really depends on at what point the customer or at what point the founder is within their journey. And so oftentimes when I come in, what I find is the founder is doing a lot of everything across the full business. So there isn't, experience or discipline within marketing, for instance. And so we've got to look at, okay, where are we winning right now, or where have we won? What is our ideal customer profile that gives us a right to win and gives us the highest probability to retain that customer? And so that's one area. Another area that I'm an expert in really is architecting the systems. So what are we using on the front end to create demand? What does our CRM system look like? What does our ERP system look like? And are all of those data sets connected so that we're really looking at the truth, the operational truth is what I would call it, between all of the systems that create the go-to-market architecture.
Okay. Great. And then, so with your service, you're placing these fractional CROs and COOs. So I'd like to get a little more detail on the process there. Are you actually having these? Are you sending talent to them, and individuals, candidates, and then they're kind of choosing, or are you just straight placing who you think would be the right fit, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I would say it's mostly myself coming in and working directly with the founder to complete a diagnostic, call it over the first 30 days. Really understanding what the business is doing today, where are we having success, where are we having limitations, and then from there, I make recommendations around the right folks to bring in. In terms of could it be marketing, is it revenue operations? Perhaps it's sales enablement, right? Maybe we need a real focus on helping the team understand what I call the ICP cube, which is, where do we have success? What are the personas behind, those groupings? And how do you have those conversations in a highly effective way along the customer journey and the moments that matter, so that you're having the highest outcome with your highest cost, which is people who are having those conversations. And so it's not just me coming in and saying, okay, I'm going to introduce one or two people. I take a more strategic approach, really having a great understanding of what the founder's looking for, what are the other key employees within the organization that need help, putting that together in a comprehensive way to deliver back to the founder. And then from there, we bring in the right folks to help them accelerate their growth.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a very intriguing system that you have, where you're very involved right from the start, which then you can bring your expertise to help them kind of backfill what's needed,
I
which
think
is
that's
great.
right, Dean. And it's important, I think, to learn at the beginning what's working and what's not. It's not, a cookie cutter approach where I've got an answer before I actually meet the founder or the CEO. It's really important for me to get a good understanding of what's working, what's not, and what's the leverage points that we have in order to accelerate the business as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think what I like about it the most, what you're doing is the fact that you're putting yourself into the position as, like a founder-led company, as the founder to go in and investigate what needs to be done. And you're doing those things on your own to get there. And that's something that not every company does, right? They just put a person in place and hope that the success rate is good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure that there's a good fit between myself and the leadership team, because if there's not, then the likelihood of success is less. And again, founders, are the reason that folks like I have jobs. Operators have jobs because they have an idea, they have unending energy, and they work tirelessly to have created a business that's now at a point where there's product market fit and we're ready to begin to scale. But perhaps they're not ready to bring in a full time C-level executive, whether that be a revenue executive or an operations executive. And so I can help them prepare for that eventuality of hiring a full time person by giving them some shortcuts that I've learned over my 15-year career working with some of the largest private equity companies in the space.
Yeah, and I'm an owner entrepreneur myself, and there's so many companies because you get into these groups and you meet a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that succeed, a lot of people that don't, and so where are these companies stalling, or in your perspective, where are they stalling between the startup success and then leading on to enterprise? How do you make that extra jump? Is it people? Is it the right people?
So I think it's evolving, right? I think if you look at sort of 10 years ago or even less, maybe the grow at all cost perspective of just adding people and then those people are going to have some percentage of success. I think that dynamic is shifting now to where, it's not such a huge focus on just bringing in new sales, but really the right side of the bow tie, which is the customer experience and net revenue retention. That really is the metric I think that a lot of companies are starting to look for. And so making sure that the sales that you have are actually turning into revenue and that revenue is being retained. Those are really the levers that I focus on, and what that means is you have to have a clear ICP. You have to have a clear process for enabling both your employees as well as your customers on the right way to use your software or your services in order for them to get value. And once you can show that there is an ROI in a predictable and repeatable way, that's what really helps companies go from good to great in terms of just doing enough to getting to more of those rule of 40, rule of 50. Some companies are now even looking at rule of 80 as you think about what AI is going to do in terms of workflow management and creating efficiencies for employees.
Okay. Are you seeing a lot of companies focus too much on sales and acquisition of new clients and then just not focusing on the customer experience, like you said?
I think it's a shifting dynamic in the space right now. I think people are seeing NRR as kind of the key metric, especially as you think about the next phase in terms of raising capital or successful exit. Acquirers want to know, what are your contract terms, right? What is your retention? If you're only filling up the left side of the funnel, but you're not turning that into cash on the right side of the funnel and then being able to retain that, then do you really have a true service that creates value or not? And so in that way, I think making sure that there is a great onboarding process once the contract is signed and that you have a great experience, that those are the most important pieces. Because it's great to get a sale, but it's even better to retain that customer because the cost of sales and return on sales, is definitely not, from a margin perspective, what it is if you're able to retain that customer for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
Okay. And then one of your specialties is revenue transformation. Could you explain what that means to us?
Yeah, when we think about revenue transformation, it really goes to PCB's operating ethos, which is culture, clarity, and then exit or execution. And so, looking at the cost of revenue, where do we invest, our money that comes from our margin back into the business? Where do we place our bets in order to transform our revenue profile and our margin profile? That's what I mean by revenue transformation. So it's looking at, what are the opportunities for us to grow in the space? Where are potential acquisition targets that we can add, or partner? Partner channels are a great leverage point to change the revenue profile. And so those are a few examples of what PCB brings to those founder-led companies or sponsor-backed companies that are looking to transform the revenue profile that they have.
Okay, and then a question that popped up in my mind real quick before we take a commercial break. I just want to learn: uh, are you seeing a lot of predictable growth or more unpredictable growth in founder-led companies? And then how are you tackling that?
Yeah, so I think it runs the gamut. I mean, some are very predictable and some aren't. And I think one of the things that's important is thinking about the way that you first acquire a customer. So if you are only doing, first month free and then, it's a 1 year contract, that is very difficult to create predictable revenue. So, you think about like rule of six, for instance, which is contract term plus the amount that you're increasing on your base every year. Those are levers that you can use during the sales process in order to create more predictable revenue. So if you're able to get that 2 year contract or 3 year contract by demonstrating clear value and a return on cost to your buyer, then you can create a more predictable revenue stream that you can then leverage, if you get into situations where you're looking to recap the business or even exit the business.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break and then we will be right back. Hi, everybody. Dagen here. If you're seeing me talking to you right now, that means that this commercial ad spot is vacant and it's available for your company in your area. It will only show to your area. So please contact us today at dagenmedia.com if you're interested in becoming a sponsor. Right. And we're back to our episode of Executive Intelligence here with Cole Bowman. He is the founder of PCB Advisory once again. And so I wanted to really start to dive in to AI here, Cole. So really the theme of our show, and I think it's time we start really diving into it. So I know that AI is starting to change a lot of people's lives and industries and the way that you use things and tools and all that stuff. And so I'm just curious as to, how that is affecting what you do as an advisory company to these founder-led companies.
Yeah, it's a great question, and obviously a very relevant topic that you see every day in the news and all over LinkedIn and other places. Where people are going for commercial intelligence. I think AI is not going to replace people. I don't think it's going to replace great leaders. I think one of the things that AI is doing is exposing leadership weakness, and I've had the good fortune of working with PE companies that have been on the leading edge of developing and investing in AI factories and in AI thought leadership for the last 10 years. And what that has given me confidence in is, you can't just take a large language model like any of the ones that would come to mind and put your processes into that, um, because that is only going to create more confusion. I think what you have to do is you have to start from first principles and really build AI into the foundation of your company. And what I mean by that, Dagan, is if you think about workflow processes across the revenue journey or across any business, those are the things that you need to start using AI. Employees have to understand that they are responsible for using AI. They can't just wait for leadership to explain this is the one, two, three, or four things that you need to do. So, for instance, if I think about an easy way to get started with AI, it's ask your employees, right, to come up with one process that they do every day, whether that's going out and looking for, new account information or new prospect information. So think about it in terms of three columns on a spreadsheet. The first column would be, what's the process that I do today? And how long does it take me to do that? And then the second column is, okay, if I add in whatever, Claude, ChatGPT, AI SDR that you might be piloting, any of those things. Now, what time is it saving me? Right. And then the third column is just the output of that. So, how much time did it take me before? How much time is it taking me with AI? And then the important piece is that you have the capability within the company, whether that sits in, enablement, training, whatever you want to call it, somewhere where that information is being captured so that you can leverage that across the organization and say, hey, Dagan's in the camp where he's on the bleeding edge of AI. He's using it every day, and this is the success that he's having. Right. The second camp may be, I'm starting to test AI, but I don't really understand, how to use it in the best way possible. I don't know how to create agents. I don't know how to create projects, but I want to learn. And then you get a third camp of employees that are probably scared of AI, and they think AI is going to replace them or AI is going to displace them. And so that's where I think the leadership piece is so important. It's to encourage employees to experiment. It's encourage employees to try it and see what happens, whether again, it's going through account research, you're preparing for a sales call. Once the call is finished, if you have some of the tools that are, doing conversation intelligence or summarizing notes at the end of the call, making sure that that information is in there, so that AI can help you with follow-up emails that can be impactful, that are tailored. We talk a lot about tailoring messages, whether on the front end of sales, or even in customer experience. So that's one use case. Another use case is, nobody likes putting information into their CRM, or they forget what information they need to put in CRM. So it's very simple workflows that I think AI can help accelerate, can help create better data, more reliable data, and that's going to enable organizations across the board, whether it's sales, operations, accounting, revenue operations, any of those, to create more time, which will give them the ability to work on higher value. So higher value roles. And so one of the things that we look at when we come into the organization is do they have documented workflows? Because if they're documented, then that allows AI to help in a more effective and efficient way faster, which leads to higher productivity, which leads to likely higher margins.
Okay, and one thing I really like about that response is that you actually gave a full example of how it can be implemented. A lot of the times we talk about AI and we say you can use this and you can use that and you can use this, but no one really gives examples. And so that was an awesome example of how leaders can start to implement this. But I want to dig even deeper, right? So a lot of people, and there may be people watching this right now saying, "Oh, my leader's never going to let us just let loose on AI." There are a lot of old school managers out there, a lot of ones that like their old school processes, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what's worked for years. My one argument with that is in the past, when you try to get these guys to implement something new, it really did not matter if they did or didn't because their business would still move along normally in a positive direction. Now it could really affect them with the way that AI is speeding up everyone's job, like you were just talking about. You can take and I'm working on this right now with the podcast stuff. I'm trying to find ways to do editing faster, to do all of these things that take me hours upon hours and try to do them faster, but still keep the quality like you were talking about and the end result being a good product. And so my question to you would be, in what ways can just leaders in general, whether they're old school managers or old school management styles, or they're open to change, how how can they handle the enablement of AI without it getting out of hand to where
Yeah,
it's more of a distraction?
yeah, no, I mean, I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns that leaders have who maybe haven't been exposed to AI, or again are thinking this is just a fad. It's not. You're seeing SaaS across the spectrum be disrupted by companies that are leaning into AI, and so I think leaders as much as line employees have a responsibility to spend time looking at how AI can best impact their business. At the same time, I think there is a real risk of just turning loose employees. And you're starting to see credits, right? AI credits with companies that are being used that are going well beyond, what was forecast in terms of expense, and that can have a real impact, on your capital efficiency as it relates to the spend on AI. So I think, from a governance perspective, it is important to have someone that's responsible for your AI strategy, and that's one of the ways that I think leaders can best put guardrails around how AI is being used, is to designate someone as this is our AI officer, or the person that's responsible for AI. That can be in enablement, that can be in engineering, that can be in a number of different places across the company. It can also be in a fractional capacity, and so using sort of best practices around how to invest in AI and how to enable AI, I think are the two recommendations that I would be making to founders who may be hesitant to lean into AI just because they don't know, and because of the real exposure of putting a lot of your information into these large language models without understanding the ramifications and the cost of doing so.
Right. Yeah. And I think it all comes down to maybe they should give it a try first if they're skeptical of it, right? And then they can kind of like any leader, you should try something first yourself, especially if you're founder led. You should be doing those things first yourself so you get a better understanding of how long it should take someone. What the process is, so that you can check in, you can be when they have questions, you can help them out as opposed to just not knowing what's going on and assigning things. So maybe that's the best approach. But how can so there's a lot of great leaders, right? And they're not most likely not going to be replaced by AI. But how can they change their mindset moving forward in this new AI age?
Yeah, I think, it goes back to, I always think about it from a growth mindset perspective, right? And so I think you've got to try and not be afraid of failure. And perhaps if you are concerned, start with a workflow that is very low exposure, right? Like your email inbox, for instance. Everybody gets a ton of email. A lot of it's not useful. Again, how much time is it taking you to go through and clean your email? Perhaps that's one simple way. Again, and the second piece would be when you're doing outreach or you're trying to do research in order to qualify your prospect and then learn about your prospect so that you can tailor a message specifically to Dagen or specifically to Cole that's going to land in a 2 or 3 sentence email. Allowing AI to help you with that and give you some recommendations, I think can shorten, the 1 hour that it's taking you to go out, scrape the website from the company, look at things like 10Ks or other financial information that's out there that can allow you to position your company and your service in a way that would take hours if you did it on your own. So those are, two simplified use cases. But again, the other thing that I would encourage leaders to do is to just let the employees come up with ideas because there are so many employees who are leaning into this. And so finding those not only I think is a way to, again, bring out some great ideas that you can govern as the senior leader or the founder. But it's just to create, some sort of AI committee to say, hey, again, those 3 columns, what's something that you do every day? How could you use AI to do it? What would the time savings be? Then the leadership team can evaluate it, decide if they want to codify it through a formal enablement program and roll it out across the organization.
Yeah, and I like that because a lot of the times founders or just leaders in general are asking their employees or managers or really anyone in the organization, "Hey, we have an open door policy. Come into my office. Let me know if there's an idea." A lot of the times people are not sharing their ideas. And maybe, yeah, there's a multitude of reasons why, right? And so it could that hesitation really could hurt the organization because they could be saving money in other areas or boosting revenue in certain areas. And so one big thing that could come with AI is exactly what you just explained, where you have the ability for them to come up with ways to utilize AI. And honestly, I think it's a lot of fun trying to figure out how to utilize AI to help your job or help you do better at something and or even learn, right? And so I think that that process alone will just be able to push companies along so much further because when it used to be in person, hey, go talk and tell someone your idea, there was never really a visual. Now with AI, there can be a visual, there can be an example very, very quickly. And so I think that transforms into a lot more growth internally within companies as well.
No, I think you're exactly right, Dagan. I mean, if you think about, visualization, creating presentations, making them appealing, there are so many tools out there that it can be a little bit overwhelming and so I totally get some of the hesitance, but I do think having curiosity about AI and thinking about it in terms of how can this help me create efficiencies for each of my employees so that I don't have to add headcount, right? I can continue to grow. As a matter of fact, I can grow at an accelerated rate and I can keep my cost the same because I'm creating so much efficiency with some of these great tools that are out there.
Right, right. Just makes everything faster, really, at that point, and more efficient. So, uh, you've worked with a lot of founders in a lot of different spaces, and so how I guess what could you share with us that how they've implemented AI without getting yourself in trouble here?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll be candid and also careful. I think just getting started is number one, and starting from the top down and saying, "Hey, look, I don't know all the answers here, but I do know that AI is not going away. And so I want you all to start thinking about ways that AI can impact your job. I think is the number one piece that I would credit to the founders that I've seen have success leaning into AI. I think asking employees to be curious sort of relieves some of the pressure that people are thinking about in terms of if you don't tell them, if you don't tell employees what the strategy is or what the direction is, they will create their own narrative. And so by helping them understand that the company is thinking about ways that AI can improve the day-to-day employee experience, and that goes to the culture piece. A culture of getting better every day incrementally, and leveraging tools that can help you get better every day incrementally. AI is one of those that's going to unlock a ton of potential. And so that would be, I think, the number one thing that I think separates founders who really lean into AI versus those that are saying, you know what, I don't know enough about this, and I'm just gonna sit on the sidelines, and then starting with a couple of those simple workflows. And then from there, I think it just takes off.
Okay. And then, so there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs, owners, maybe even CEOs that are watching this show or stumble upon it. What are what are investors for the younger guys? What are investors actually looking for? What makes a business attractive to buyers?
Yeah, well, I think it all goes to unit economics. That is the number one thing. So I think as a founder or CEO, you have to understand your unit economics, and that's across the customer life cycle. So everything from your MQL to your SAL to your SQL, and then how fast you're moving things through the funnel. So you have to have defined stages with entry and exit criteria, as well as on the other side, of the commitment or the contract is what did you believe was going to be the revenue, right when the sales order went out? And then is there any leakage between that and what is actually produced on the revenue side? Then the other important thing, Dagan, which I think is likely one of the most important things, is the NRR piece. So the net revenue retention. So not just how much annual recurring revenue do you have, but is your net revenue retention growing, right? And so understanding what those percentages should be, and being able to speak to that confidently, that's number one, the unit economics. The second piece is what is your growth story, right? How much total addressable market is out there? And then of that, what is the obtainable piece, right? So we talk about the TAM, SAM, and the SOM. Understanding those pieces are critical, because anybody that's buying your business and is going to pay a multiple on your current revenue or your current EBITDA, is looking for how much they're going to get, in the next wave in terms of multiple on invested capital. So I think those are two anchor points that you've got to be able to come into a conversation and speak confidently about. Is how much revenue are you generating? How predictable is that growth? And then what is the story beyond the next transaction, that's going to give that investor the confidence that you have a real business that has the opportunity to grow.
Okay. Great. Well, yeah, that's a great advice, great insight for, people who may be watching that would be very interested in just understanding what your knowledge is from coming from that space. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that with us. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here. At the end of everything, I always give our guest a chance to kind of either bring something up or promote something, or whatever words you have to kind of close out the show, you're welcome to do so. So Cole, is there anything you'd like to add right now?
Dagan, I appreciate being on. And for any founders or executive teams that are in that spot that I mentioned earlier, not ready to bring on a full-time CRO, but definitely want the opportunity to learn about my experience, or what I believe helps create successful companies that are moving from founder-led to more, system-oriented led growth, that's where I can be helpful. So I'm available on LinkedIn, patrickcolebowman.com, and would love to have the opportunity to have a conversation.
Of course, and we'll add your LinkedIn to the description below the video, so anyone can just click on that and go right to your LinkedIn and reach out to you if they're interested in getting in touch. So again, Cole, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And that'll do for another episode of Executive Intelligence. We'll see you guys next time. Hi, everybody. Dagen here. If you're seeing me talking to you right now, that means that this commercial ad spot is vacant and it's available for your company in your area. It will only show to your area. So please contact us today at dagenmedia.com if you're interested in becoming a sponsor.